The depot sat on the edge of town, a squat concrete building surrounded by chain-link fence and floodlights that buzzed against the night sky. Beyond it stretched miles of empty highway and farmland, the kind of landscape that swallowed sound and made you feel small. I parked my beat-up sedan in the employee lot and sat for a moment, staring at the glowing sign above the loading bay. Crescent Express Logistics. It wasn't glamorous, but it was work, and I needed work. Inside, the air smelled of diesel, cardboard, and burnt coffee. Forklifts beeped as they moved pallets, drivers shouted over the noise, and the dispatcher's office glowed with the blue light of computer screens. I signed my name on the clipboard, collected my badge, and was handed a set of keys. "Van's out back," the dispatcher said without looking up. His name tag read, Carl. His voice was gravelly, the kind of voice that came from too many cigarettes and too little sleep. "Routes loaded. You'll be fine." I nodded, though my stomach twisted. The van was an old Ford, paint-chipped, logo half-peeled from the side. The headlights flickered when I turned the key, and the engine coughed like it resented being woken. Inside, the seats were cracked vinyl, the dashboard sticky with years of spilled soda, and taped to the glove compartment was a sheet of paper. The edges were yellowed, the ink faded, but the words were clear. Rules for night deliveries. Never deliver to a house with all the lights off. If a package hums, do not touch it. Never look inside a package, no matter what you hear. If someone follows you, do not stop. Return all undeliverable packages to the depot before dawn. At the bottom, in smaller print, failure to comply will result in termination. I read them twice, then a third time waiting for the punchline. But there wasn't one. No smiley face, no welcome to the team. Just those rules taped in place like scripture. Carl appeared at the driver's side window, leaning in with a cigarette dangling from his lips. His eyes were bloodshot, his face lined. "You read the rules?" "Yeah," I said. "What is this, some kind of joke?" His expression didn't change. "Not a joke. Just follow them. Don't get clever." Before I could ask what that meant, he slapped the side of the van and walked away. The first few stops were easy. A ranch-style house with a porch light glowing. A gas station on the edge of town, the clerk barely glancing up as I dropped the box on the counter. A diner, still open at midnight, where the waitress gave me a tired smile and a free refill of coffee. Normal. Ordinary. But the packages weren't. One was ice cold, frost clinging to the cardboard even though the night was warm. Another rattled faintly, like something shifting inside. And one, just one, vibrated in my hands, a low hum that traveled up my arms and into my chest. I froze, remembering rule number 2. If a package hums, do not touch it. I set it back down in the van, heart pounding. My fingers tingled where they'd brushed the cardboard. The rest of the night passed in a blur of headlights and empty streets. The town was quiet, too quiet. The kind of quiet that makes you feel like you're the last person alive. Every time I checked the rearview mirror, I half expected to see someone sitting in the back, watching me. At 3 a.m., I pulled up to a farmhouse on the outskirts. The address matched the slip. But the house was dark. No porch light, no glow from the windows. Just blackness. Rule number 1. Never deliver to a house with all the lights off. I sat there for a long moment, engine idling, staring at the silhouette of the house. The package on the seat beside me seemed to grow heavier, as if it wanted to be delivered. My hand hovered over it. Then I shifted into gear and drove away. In the rearview mirror, I thought I saw movement, a figure standing by the mailbox watching me leave. But when I blinked, the road was empty. By the time I returned to the depot, dawn was breaking. Carl was waiting, leaning against the loading dock with a cigarette dangling from his lips. He didn't ask how it went. He just nodded at the van. "You followed the rules?" he asked. I hesitated, then nodded. "Good," he said, exhaling smoke. "That's why you're still here." The second night felt easier at first. I knew the route now. Quiet neighborhoods, long stretches of highway, the occasional diner glowing like a beacon in the dark. The van rattled along the back roads, headlights cutting through the mist that clung to the fields. But the packages were different. The first one I picked up from the depot was heavier than it looked. The cardboard sagged slightly, as if something inside shifted when I lifted it. I set it on the passenger seat, trying not to think about the way it seemed to breathe with the rhythm of the engine. The second package was worse. It was warm, not just room temperature warm, but body heat warm, like it had been pressed against someone's skin. I pulled my hand back quickly, wiping my palm on my jeans. I told myself it was nothing, just tricks of the mind, nerves playing games. But the rules taped to the glove compartment kept flashing in my head. Never look inside. Never touch if it hums. By the third stop, I was sweating. The house was a two-story colonial on the edge of town, porch light glowing faintly. I carried the warm package up the steps, every instinct screaming at me to drop it and run. But I forced myself to set it down, ring the bell, and walk away. The door opened just as I reached the van. A woman stood there in a nightgown, her face pale in the porch light. She didn't look at me. She didn't look at the package. She just bent down, scooped it up, and closed the door without a word. I sat in the van for a long moment, heart pounding. At the next stop, I wasn't alone. Another van was parked across the street, engine idling. The driver leaned against the hood, smoking. He was older, maybe mid-40s, with a beard flecked gray, and eyes that looked like they hadn't seen sleep in years. "You're the new guy," he said as I climbed out. His voice was flat, tired. "Yeah," I said cautiously. He flicked ash onto the pavement. "Read the rules?" I nodded. "Good. Don't break them." He took a long drag, exhaled smoke. "Most don't last a week," I frowned. "What happens if you do?" He gave me a look that made my stomach twist. "You don't want to know." Before I could ask more, he stubbed out his cigarette and climbed back into his van. The engine roared, and he drove off without another word. I finished my deliveries in silence, the rules echoing louder with every stop. At 2:30 a.m., I reached a small house at the end of a cul-de-sac. The package on the seat beside me rattled faintly, like something shifting inside. I froze, remembering the logs I'd found in the glove compartment the night before. Names crossed out, notes scribbled in the margins. Didn't follow rule number 4. Gone. I carried the rattling box to the porch, my hands slick with sweat. The house lights were on, but dim, like someone had turned every bulb to its lowest setting. I set the package down, rang the bell, and stepped back. The door opened slowly. A man stood there, tall and thin, his eyes shadowed. He didn't speak. He didn't thank me. He just reached out, took the box, and closed the door. I walked back to the van, legs trembling. The rest of the night blurred together. Houses, porches, packages that felt heavier than they should. By the time I returned to the depot, dawn was breaking again. Carl was waiting as always. He didn't ask how it went. He just looked at me, his eyes sharp. "You followed the rules?" I nodded, though my voice caught in my throat. "Good," he said. "Then you'll be back tomorrow." The third night started like the others. Quiet, routine, almost boring. But I'd already learned that boredom was a lie on this job. The rules weren't suggestions. They were survival. The van rattled along the back roads, headlights cutting through the mist. The packages stacked behind me shifted with every bump, cardboard groaning like something alive. I tried not to think about it. Tried not to think about the one box that had been humming faintly since I left the depot. Rule number 2. If a package hums, do not touch it. I kept glancing at it in the rearview mirror, half expecting it to slide forward on its own. The first few deliveries went smoothly. A suburban house with a glowing porch light. A late-night mechanic's shop where the owner barely looked up from his work. A trailer park where a woman in slippers took her package without a word. Normal. Almost. Then I reached the farmhouse. It was the same one from my first night, the one I'd skipped because the lights were off. Tonight the porch light glowed faintly, a single bulb buzzing against the dark. The address matched the slip in my hand. I hesitated, remembering the figure I'd seen by the mailbox. My stomach twisted. Still, the rules were clear. Lights on meant safe. I grabbed the package and walked up the steps. The wood creaked under my boots. The air smelled faintly of rot, like something had died nearby. I set the box down, rang the bell, and stepped back. The door opened slowly. A man stood there, tall and thin, his face hidden in shadow. His eyes caught the porch light, reflecting yellow for just a moment before he bent down and picked up the package. He didn't speak. He didn't thank me. He just closed the door. I stood frozen for a moment, heart pounding. Then I forced myself back to the van. As I pulled away, I checked the rearview mirror. The figure was there again, standing by the mailbox, watching me leave. I gripped the wheel tighter, pressing the accelerator. My pulse hammered in my ears. Rule number 4. If someone follows you, do not stop. The road stretched empty behind me, but the figure didn't fade. Every time I glanced in the mirror, it was closer. First by the mailbox, then by the edge of the road. Then in the middle of the lane, standing still as I sped past. I didn't stop. I didn't even slow down. By the time I reached the next town, the figure was gone. But the fear lingered, clinging to me like smoke. At the diner, I tried to steady myself with coffee. The waitress gave me a look, her eyes narrowing. "You're one of them," she said quietly. "One of who?" I asked. "Night drivers." She set the cup down hard enough to spill. "You shouldn't be here." Before I could ask more, she walked away. The rest of the shift blurred together. Deliveries, empty streets, the hum of the package in the back. By the time I returned to the depot, dawn was breaking. Carl was waiting, as always. He looked me over, his eyes sharp. "You followed the rules?" he asked. I nodded, though my voice caught in my throat. "Good," he said. "Then you'll be back tomorrow." But as I walked to my car, I noticed something taped to the windshield, another sheet of paper. The same rules, written in the same faded ink. But this time, there was an addition at the bottom. Rule number 6. If you see the man by the mailbox, do not acknowledge him. My hands shook as I peeled it off. The desert might not forget, but neither did the road. And now, it knew me. The fourth night began with a strange kind of peace. The air was cool, the sky clear, and the roads stretched empty under the glow of the street lamps. For the first time since I'd started this job, I felt almost comfortable behind the wheel of the van. The hum of the engine was steady, the packages stacked neatly in the back, and the rules, those absurd, terrifying rules, felt distant, like a bad dream I'd already woken from. I told myself I was getting used to it. That maybe the first 3 nights had just been nerves, my imagination filling in the blanks of a lonely job. After all, nothing had really happened. Not to me. Not yet. The farmhouse. The figure, by the mailbox, the humming package, they could all be explained away if I tried hard enough. Sleep deprivation. Stress. The power of suggestion. I'd read the rules and my brain had done the rest. That's what I told myself as the van rolled down the highway, headlights carving a path through the dark, but deep down I knew better. I thought about why I'd taken the job in the first place. It wasn't because I liked driving, or because I wanted to work nights. It was because I didn't have a choice. Rent was overdue. My brother's rehab bill was coming up. My mother's medical expenses were piling higher every month. I needed money, and this job paid in cash, no questions asked. That was the hook. That was why I was here, driving through the night with a van full of packages I didn't understand. Because desperation makes you ignore the things you should run from. The town was quiet as I passed through. Houses lined the streets, their windows glowing faintly with the blue light of televisions. A dog barked somewhere in the distance, then fell silent. The world felt suspended, like time itself had slowed. I pulled into a cul-de-sac, checked the slip, and carried a package to the porch. The house lights were on, the curtains drawn. I set the box down, rang the bell, and walked back to the van. No one answered, but that didn't matter. Delivery complete. Back in the driver's seat, I let out a long breath. Maybe this was all it would ever be. Just packages and porches. Just rules that sounded scarier than they really were. For a moment I let myself believe it. The road stretched ahead, empty and calm. The radio crackled faintly with static, then settled into silence. My hands loosened on the wheel, my shoulders unclenched. It was almost peaceful. But peace is a lie on this job. Because even as I drove, even as I convinced myself that everything was fine, I could feel it. The weight of the packages behind me, waiting, watching, and I knew the calm wouldn't last. The night was calm, almost too calm. The kind of quiet that makes you second-guess your own breathing. I'd convinced myself that maybe the rules were just scare tactics, a way to keep rookies sharp. But then I made the mistake. It was close to 2 a.m. when I pulled into a cul-de-sac on the far edge of town. The houses were spaced far apart, their yards swallowed by shadows. The slip in my hand read 1439 Willow Lane. I double-checked the number, then glanced at the house. Dark, every window black. No porch light. Rule number 1. Never deliver to a house with all the lights off. I sat there for a long moment, engine idling, staring at the address. The package on the seat beside me seemed to grow heavier, as if it knew where it belonged. My chest tightened. I should have skipped it, driven on, followed the rules. But I didn't. I told myself it was fine. Maybe the family was asleep. Maybe they'd left the lights off to save power. I grabbed the box and walked up the path, gravel crunching under my boots. The air felt colder here, heavy, like the night itself was pressing down on me. The porch boards groaned as I stepped onto them. I set the package down, rang the bell, and waited. Nothing. I turned to leave, relief flooding me, until I heard it. A click. The sound of a lock turning. The door creaked open an inch, just enough for me to see the darkness inside. "Delivery," I said, my voice too loud in the silence. No answer. The package shifted on its own, sliding an inch closer to the door. My stomach dropped. I backed away, heart hammering. The door opened wider, but no one stood there. Just blackness, thick and absolute, like the house was hollow inside. Then I saw them, eyes, dozens of them, glowing faintly in the dark. Watching me, I stumbled back, nearly tripping over the steps. The package slid across the porch and vanished into the shadows. The door slammed shut. The silence that followed was worse than the sound. I ran to the van, fumbling with the keys, my hands shaking. The engine roared to life, and I tore out of the cul-de-sac, tires screeching. In the rearview mirror, I saw movement. A figure stood in the middle of the road, tall and thin, its head cocked at an unnatural angle. It didn't move as I sped past, didn't flinch, just watched. Rule number 4. If someone follows you, do not stop. I pressed the accelerator harder, eyes locked on the road ahead. But every time I glanced in the mirror, the figure was closer. First at the end of the street, then at the intersection, then standing by the roadside, its face hidden in shadow. I didn't stop. I didn't even blink. By the time I reached the highway, the figure was gone. But the fear stayed, coiled tight in my chest. When I finally returned to the depot, dawn was breaking. Carl was waiting as always, cigarette dangling from his lips. "You followed the rules?" he asked. I opened my mouth, then closed it. My throat was dry. He studied me for a long moment, then nodded. "Good. Then you'll be back tomorrow." As I walked to my car, I noticed something taped to the windshield. Another sheet of paper. The same rules. But this time, a new line had been added at the bottom. Rule number 7. If you deliver to the wrong house, do not return to that street. Ever. My hand shook as I peeled it off. The rules weren't just warnings. They were alive, watching, changing. And now I'd broken one. The package had been humming since I left the depot. At first I thought it was the van, an old Ford with a dashboard that rattled if you hit 60. But the sound wasn't mechanical. It was low, steady, rhythmic, like a heartbeat. Rule number 2. If a package hums, do not touch it. I'd followed that rule religiously. Every time the van hit a bump and the box slid across the floor, I forced myself to leave it where it landed. But tonight, the humming grew louder, louder and closer. By the time I reached the halfway point of my route, the sound filled the van. It vibrated in my chest, made my teeth ache. I pulled over on the shoulder of a deserted road, headlights cutting across the empty fields. The box sat in the middle of the cargo space, small and unremarkable. Brown cardboard, black tape, a shipping label smudged with ink. But the hum, it pulsed like it was alive. I told myself to ignore it, to keep driving. But then it moved. The box slid forward on its own, bumping against the back of my seat. The hum deepened, vibrating through the metal frame. I swore under my breath, grabbed the crowbar from under the seat, and shoved the box back. It stopped moving, but the hum didn't fade. If anything, it grew stronger, syncing with my heartbeat until I couldn't tell which was mine and which was its. I gripped the wheel, knuckles white. "Don't touch it," I whispered. "Don't touch it." But the van shuddered, engine sputtering. The headlights flickered. The hum rose higher, filling the air like a chant. And then I heard it. A voice, faint at first, buried in the vibration. A whisper threading through the hum. "Open it." I froze. My breath caught in my throat. "Open it," the voice repeated, clearer now. It wasn't one voice. It was many, layered together, speaking in unison. I slammed the radio on, static filling the cab, but the voices cut through, louder than before. "Open it! Open it! Open it!" The van lurched forward, engine roaring, though my foot wasn't on the gas. I slammed the brakes, but the pedals sank uselessly. The van barreled down the empty road, the hum shaking the windows. I grabbed the box with both hands, desperate to stop it from sliding again. The moment my fingers touched the cardboard, the world shifted. The road vanished. I was standing in a field of black sand under a sky with no stars. The air was heavy, thick, pressing against my skin. Shapes moved at the edges of my vision. Tall, thin figures with too many joints, their heads cocked at unnatural angles. The box pulsed in my hands, glowing faintly. The hum was deafening now, rattling my bones. One of the figures stepped closer. Its face was blank, smooth skin stretched tight. But where its mouth should have been, the hum poured out, vibrating the air. It reached for me. I screamed and dropped the box. The world snapped back. I was in the van again, parked on the shoulder, chest heaving. The box lay on the floor, silent now. No hum, no movement, just cardboard. My hands shook as I shoved it into the farthest corner, covering it with other packages. I didn't care where it was supposed to go. I wasn't delivering it. The rest of the night passed in a blur. Every house, every porch, every delivery felt like a dream I couldn't wake from. My ears rang with phantom vibrations, my chest still aching from the hum. When I finally returned to the depot, dawn was breaking. Carl was waiting, as always. "You followed the rules?" he asked. I hesitated. My throat was dry. "Yeah," his eyes narrowed, studying me. Then he nodded. "Good. Then you'll be back tomorrow." But as I walked to my car, I noticed something taped to the windshield. Another sheet of paper. The same rules. But this time, a new line had been added. Rule number 8. If a package hums and you touch it, do not deliver it. Ever. My stomach dropped. The rules weren't just warnings. They were keeping track, and now they knew what I'd done. By the 5th night, I'd stopped pretending the job was normal. The rules weren't just guidelines. They were alive, watching me, changing in response to what I did. Every time I came back to the depot, another line had been added to the sheet. Another warning, another trap. I told myself I'd quit, that I'd hand in the keys, walk away, and never look back. But then I thought of Danny's rehab bill, my mother's prescriptions, The rent notice taped to my apartment door. Walking away wasn't an option. Not yet. The van rattled as I pulled onto the highway, the packages stacked neatly in the back. I kept glancing at the glove compartment, at the rules taped there like scripture. My hands itched to tear them down, to crumple them into nothing. But I didn't. Instead, I opened the glove box. Inside was a mess of old delivery slips, crumpled receipts, and a battered leather logbook. The cover was cracked, the pages yellowed. I flipped it open, curiosity gnawing at me. The first few entries were ordinary: dates, addresses, signatures. But then the handwriting changed. The notes grew frantic, scrawled in the margins. Rule number 2 broken. Package opened itself. Driver gone. Rule number 4 ignored. Van found empty on Route 19. Rule number 1 broken. House dark. No return. My stomach tightened. Page after page. The same pattern. Names of drivers I didn't recognize, each one followed by a note. Didn't follow rule number 3. Disappeared. Didn't return package before dawn. Never came back. The last entry was dated only a few months ago. The handwriting was shaky, desperate. They're watching me now. I see them in the mirrors. If anyone finds this, don't take the job. Don't drive the route. The rules aren't to protect us. They're to feed them. The page ended there, the pen stroke trailing off mid-line. I slammed the logbook shut, my hands trembling. The van felt smaller now, the air heavier. I glanced in the rearview mirror, half expecting to see someone sitting in the back. For a moment I thought I did. A shadow hunched and still. But when I blinked, it was gone. I shoved the logbook back into the glove compartment and slammed it shut. My chest ached, my pulse racing. The rules weren't warnings. They were instructions, rituals, and every driver before me had been part of it. I gripped the wheel tighter, forcing myself to focus on the road. The packages shifted behind me, cardboard groaning. Somewhere in the distance a howl rose, faint but clear. Not a coyote, not a dog, something else. I pressed the accelerator harder, the van roaring down the empty highway. The logbook's words echoed in my head. The rules aren't to protect us. They're to feed them, and I knew, with a sick certainty, that I was next. By the time I pulled into the diner, my nerves were shot. The logbook's words still echoed in my head. The rules aren't to protect us, they're to feed them. I needed coffee, something solid to anchor me, even if it was just burnt diner brew and a plate of greasy eggs. The place was nearly empty. A couple of truckers hunched over their plates, a jukebox humming faintly in the corner. And the waitress, same one I'd seen before, wiping down the counter. She looked up when I walked in, her eyes narrowing. "You again?" she said. "Yeah," I muttered, sliding into a booth. "Long night." She poured me coffee without asking. The steam curled up, carrying the bitter scent. I wrapped my hands around the mug, trying to stop the shaking. "You're one of them," she said quietly. I looked up. "One of who?" "Night drivers." She leaned closer, her voice dropping. "You shouldn't be here." I forced a laugh. "It's just a job." Her expression didn't change. "That's what they all say." Something in her tone made my stomach twist. "What do you mean?" She glanced around the diner, making sure no one was listening. "You ever wonder why the company only hires desperate folks? People with debts, sick family, no other options? They don't want drivers who'll quit. They want drivers who'll keep going no matter what." I swallowed hard. "Why?" She leaned closer, her voice barely above a whisper. "Because the packages aren't going where you think they are. You're not delivering to people. You're delivering to them." The word hung in the air, heavy and sharp. "Them?" I asked. She didn't answer, just straightened up, poured herself a cup of coffee, and walked away. I sat there, staring into the dark liquid, my pulse hammering. When I finally left, the night felt heavier. The van loomed in the parking lot, packages stacked inside like silent passengers. I slid behind the wheel, the rules taped to the glove compartment catching my eye. They weren't warnings. They weren't even instructions. They were rituals, and I was part of them now. As I pulled back onto the highway, the headlights cut through the dark. For a moment I thought I saw something at the edge of the road. A figure, tall and thin, head cocked at an unnatural angle, watching. I pressed the accelerator harder, the van roaring into the night. The rules weren't protecting me. They were binding me. And whatever waited at the end of the route, I wasn't sure I wanted to see it. By the seventh night, the van didn't feel like a vehicle anymore. It felt like a coffin on wheels. The air inside was heavy, thick with the smell of cardboard and something else, something metallic, like blood left too long in the sun. The packages stacked behind me seemed taller, heavier, as if they'd multiplied while I wasn't looking. Every bump in the road made them groan, a chorus of shifting weight that sounded almost like breathing. The rules were taped to the glove compartment, same as always. But they didn't look like paper anymore. They looked carved, etched into the plastic, as if they'd always been there. I'd memorized them by now, but I couldn't stop reading them over and over. Never deliver to a house with all the lights off. If a package hums, do not touch it. Never look inside a package, no matter what you hear. If someone follows you, do not stop. Return all undeliverable packages to the depot before dawn. If you see the man by the mailbox, do not acknowledge him. If you deliver to the wrong house, do not return to that street. Ever. If a package hums and you touch it, do not deliver it. Ever. Each line felt heavier than the last, like prophecy instead of instruction. Not rules to follow, but inevitabilities waiting to happen. Carl had said nothing when he handed me the keys that night. No cigarette dangling from his lips. No half-hearted, "You'll be fine." Just silence. His eyes had lingered on me a second too long, though, like he was memorizing my face. Like he knew I wouldn't be coming back. The town looked different, too. The streets were emptier, the houses darker. Even the neon signs that usually buzzed outside the gas stations and diners were dead, their glass tubes cold. It was as if the whole place was holding its breath, waiting. I drove in silence, the hum of the engine the only sound. My chest felt tight, my hands slick on the wheel. Every shadow looked sharper, every corner darker. The headlights seemed weaker, swallowed by the night. The first delivery was to a house I'd been to before. Porch light on, curtains drawn, safe. I set the package down, rang the bell, and walked away. But this time, the door didn't open. No one came. The package stayed where I left it, sitting on the porch like a warning. The second stop was worse. The address matched, but the house didn't. Where there should have been a small ranch-style home, there was nothing but an empty lot. Dirt, weeds, and a single mailbox leaning at an angle. The slip in my hand burned cold. I drove on, refusing to stop. By the third stop, the packages had begun to hum. Not one, not two. All of them. The sound filled the van, vibrating through the metal frame, rattling the windows. My teeth ached, my vision blurred. I gripped the wheel tighter, whispering the rules under my breath like a prayer. Don't touch them. Don't stop. Don't look back. But the rules weren't protecting me anymore. They were binding me, guiding me. Every turn of the wheel felt preordained, every stop inevitable. The slips in my hand weren't addresses. They were coordinates in a ritual I didn't understand. By midnight, I realized the truth. This wasn't a job. It never had been. It was a route, a map, a ritual. And I was the offering. Carl was waiting for me when I pulled into the depot. He wasn't smoking this time. That alone was enough to set me on edge. For as long as I'd known him, which was only a week, but felt like years, he'd always had a cigarette dangling from his lips, smoke curling around his head like a halo of ash. Tonight his hands were empty. His eyes, though, were sharper than ever. "Inside," he said. Not a greeting, not a question, just an order. I followed him into the office. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting everything in a pale, sickly glow. The walls were lined with filing cabinets, their drawers labeled with route numbers and driver IDs. A map of the county hung on the wall, red pins marking neighborhoods, blue pins marking highways, and black pins, dozens of them, clustered in places I recognized from my deliveries. Carl shut the door behind us. The sound echoed like a gunshot. "You've been seeing things," he said. I froze. "What do you mean?" He gave me a look that cut through the lie before I could even form it. The farmhouse, The man by the mailbox. The humming package. You've seen them. My throat went dry. How do you— Because they're supposed to see you, he interrupted. That's the point. I stared at him, my pulse hammering. What are you talking about? Carl walked to the map, tapping one of the black pins. Every route is a circuit. Every delivery, a piece of the ritual. The rules aren't there to protect you. They're there to make sure the offerings get where they need to go. Offerings? I repeated, the word tasting like ash. He nodded. You think you're delivering packages to people? You're not. You're feeding them, keeping them quiet, keeping them from spreading. I shook my head. That's insane. Carl's eyes narrowed. Is it? You've seen what happens when the rules are broken. Houses that shouldn't exist. Figures that follow you. Packages that hum like they've got a pulse. You think that's normal? I opened my mouth, then closed it. The logbook flashed in my mind. Names crossed out, notes scribbled in desperation. The rules aren't to protect us. They're to feed them. Carl lit a cigarette, finally, his hands trembling as he brought it to his lips. I didn't make the rules. I just enforce them. Someone has to. If the deliveries stop, if the offerings don't get made— He exhaled smoke, the lines in his face deepening. They'll come out of the dark, and they won't stop at the edges of town. I felt sick. So you knew. You knew what this was, and you still sent me out there. He didn't flinch. You needed the job. They needed the food. It's a fair trade. A fair trade? My voice cracked. Drivers disappear. I've seen the logs. You're feeding us to them. Carl's gaze hardened. Not if you follow the rules. I laughed, bitter and hollow. That's the lie, isn't it? The rules don't save us. They just keep us alive long enough to finish the route. He didn't answer. He didn't have to. The silence stretched, heavy and suffocating. Finally, Carl spoke. You've lasted longer than most. That means something. They've taken an interest in you. My stomach dropped. What does that mean? It means you're not just a driver anymore, he said. You're part of the ritual now. Whether you like it or not. I backed toward the door, my hands shaking. I'm done. I quit. Carl's expression didn't change. You don't quit. Not from this. The route doesn't end until they say it does. I turned and fled, the sound of his voice following me out into the night. The seventh night is always the last. The map wouldn't leave my head. Even after I fled Carl's office, his words echoing in my ears, I couldn't stop picturing it. The county map pinned with red, blue, and black markers. At first glance, it had looked like random stops, scattered addresses. But the longer I stared, the more I realized the pins weren't random at all. They formed a pattern, a circle. Every route, every delivery, every package, it was all part of a design. Now, as I drove through the night, the addresses on my slips felt less like destinations and more like coordinates. Each stop was another point on the circle, another stitch in the ritual. The packages weren't just being delivered. They were being placed. The first stop was a house I'd been to before. Porch light on, curtains drawn. I set the package down, rang the bell, and walked away. But this time, I noticed something I hadn't before. A symbol carved into the wood of the porch, half hidden by the shadows. A circle with jagged lines radiating outward, like a sun drawn by a child. The second stop was worse. A trailer on the edge of town, its windows glowing faintly. I set the package down, and as I turned to leave, I saw the same symbol scratched into the dirt by the steps. By the third stop, I knew it wasn't coincidence. Every house, every porch, every address, they all bore the same mark. Some carved into wood, some painted faintly on mailboxes, some etched into the dirt. A circle with jagged lines, a ritual sigil. The packages weren't going to people. They were going to the marks. By midnight, the circle was complete. I could feel it. The air grew heavier, the night darker. The packages in the back of the van hummed faintly, vibrating in unison. My chest ached with the rhythm, my pulse sinking with theirs. I pulled over on the shoulder, my hands shaking, spread the slips out on the dashboard, tracing the addresses with my finger. It was a perfect ring around the town. Every delivery forming a boundary, every package a piece of the offering, and I was the one driving it into place. The realization hit me like a blow. I wasn't delivering packages. I was feeding something, trapping it, or maybe freeing it. The rules weren't there to protect me. They were there to make sure the ritual was completed, to keep the circle unbroken. I slammed the slips back into the glove compartment, my breath ragged. The van groaned, the packages shifting. The hum grew louder, filling the cab. And then I saw it. In the rearview mirror, the figure stood in the middle of the road. Tall, thin, head cocked at that unnatural angle. Watching me, I gripped the wheel tighter, whispering the rules under my breath. Don't stop, don't stop, don't stop. But the figure didn't move, didn't fade. Instead, more appeared. At the edges of the road, in the fields, by the mailboxes. Dozens of them, all standing still, all watching. The circle was complete. The ritual had begun, and I was trapped inside it. The circle was complete. I could feel it in my bones. The packages in the back of the van thrummed in unison, a low vibration that rattled the windows and made the steering wheel buzz beneath my hands. The air outside had changed too. Thicker, heavier, like the night itself was pressing down on me. And then the howls began. At first, they were distant, faint enough that I thought they were coyotes. But coyotes don't sound like that. Coyotes don't make a sound that crawls under your skin and settles in your chest. These howls were layered, dozens of voices rising and falling together, weaving into something that wasn't quite animal and wasn't quite human. I pressed the accelerator, the van roaring down the empty highway. But the howls followed, louder, closer. In the rearview mirror, I saw them. Figures, dozens of them, maybe hundreds, lining the road. Tall, thin, their heads cocked at unnatural angles. Their mouths didn't move, but the howls poured out of them, vibrating the air. Their eyes glowed faintly, catching the headlights as I sped past. Rule number 4. If someone follows you, do not stop. I gripped the wheel tighter, whispering the rule under my breath like a prayer. Don't stop, don't stop, don't stop. But the road ahead was blocked. A figure stood in the middle of the lane, taller than the rest, its limbs too long, its body bent at impossible angles. The howls rose higher, a chorus of hunger. I swerved, tires screeching, the van lurching onto the shoulder. Packages tumbled in the back, some bursting open. I didn't look. I couldn't. The howls grew louder, deafening now. The figures closed in, their bodies flickering at the edges of my vision, like they weren't fully there. And then the packages began to open. The cardboard split on its own, tape peeling back, flaps unfolding. I caught glimpses in the mirror, shapes writhing inside, shadows spilling out, tendrils of smoke curling into the air. The hum grew louder, syncing with the howls, until I couldn't tell where one ended and the other began. I slammed the brakes, the van skidding to a stop. My chest heaved, my vision blurred. The figures surrounded me now, their glowing eyes fixed on the van. The largest one stepped closer, its head cocked, its body twitching with every movement. The howls cut off, replaced by silence so heavy it pressed against my ears. And then it spoke, not with words, but with the hum. The vibration filled the cab, rattling my bones, shaking my teeth. Images flashed in my head, fields of black sand, skies with no stars, endless rows of figures standing still, waiting. The packages weren't deliveries. They were doors, and I had just opened them. I screamed, slamming the van into gear, tires spinning as I tore down the road. The figures didn't chase me. They didn't need to. The howls followed anyway, echoing inside my skull, louder than the engine, louder than my own heartbeat. By the time I reached the edge of town, the sky was paling with dawn. The howls faded, replaced by the hum of the engine and the ragged sound of my breathing. But I knew it wasn't over. The circle was complete. The ritual had begun, and I was still inside it. By the time I reached the highway, the sun was setting again. The day had vanished, swallowed whole. My phone buzzed in my pocket, Danny's name lighting the screen. I answered with shaking hands. "You're still out there," he said. His voice was quiet, almost reverent. I can feel it. I'm trying to come home, I whispered. You can't, he said. Not yet. The road remembers you now. You're part of it. The line went dead. I stared at the phone, my chest hollow. The van rattled, the packages in the back shifting. I hadn't loaded them. I hadn't touched them. But they were there, stacked neatly, humming faintly. I pulled onto the shoulder, stumbling out into the night air. The hum followed me, vibrating through the metal frame, rattling the windows. I opened the back doors. The packages sat in neat rows, cardboard gleaming in the moonlight, and taped to the inside of the door was a sheet of paper. The rules. But this time, there was a new line at the bottom. Rule number 9. If you survive the 7th night, you are no longer the driver. You are the dispatcher. My hands shook as I tore the paper down. The depot wasn't gone. The packages weren't gone. The route wasn't gone. It had just rebuilt itself, and now it wanted me to rebuild with it. I quit the job the next morning. At least that's what I told myself. I left the van in the depot lot, keys still in the ignition, and walked away without looking back. My legs felt like lead, my chest hollow, but I kept moving. The sun was already high, burning away the shadows. And for the first time in a week, I thought maybe I could breathe again. I told myself it was over. But the road doesn't forget. The first few days were almost normal. I slept for 12 hours straight, woke up in my apartment with sunlight streaming through the blinds, and tried to convince myself I'd dreamed it all. The depot, the rules, the packages. They couldn't have been real. Just exhaustion, stress, hallucinations brought on by too many night shifts. I even went grocery shopping, pushing a cart down fluorescent aisles, nodding politely to strangers. I paid bills, folded laundry, microwaved frozen dinners. Normal things. Human things. But normal didn't feel normal anymore. Every time I stepped outside, I felt eyes on me. Not people's eyes, their eyes. The figures. The ones that stood by the mailboxes, heads cocked at impossible angles. I'd catch glimpses at the edge of my vision. A shadow too tall, a shape too thin. By the time I turned, it was gone. At night, the hum returned. Not loud, not like before, but faint. A vibration in the walls, in the floorboards, in my chest. I'd lie awake, staring at the ceiling, listening to it sync with my heartbeat. I tried to ignore it, tried to drown it out with music, with the TV, with anything. But the hum always found its way back. On the 3rd night, I woke to find a package on my doorstep. Plain cardboard. No label, no tape, just sitting there waiting. I didn't touch it. I didn't even breathe near it. I backed into the apartment, locked the door, and pulled the curtains shut. In the morning, it was gone. I told myself it was a prank, kids messing around, a coincidence. But deep down, I knew better. The road remembers. I tried to call Danny, to hear his voice, to ground myself. He answered on the 2nd ring, his tone groggy. "You're still out there," he said quietly. "I'm home," I told him. "I quit." There was a long pause. Then, "You can't quit. Not from this." My throat tightened. "Danny." She said it again, he whispered. "Mom, in the dream." She said the road marked you. Said it won't let you go. The line went dead. I sat there, phone pressed to my ear. The silence heavier than any howl. I wanted to believe he was wrong. That I could walk away, rebuild my life, forget the rules. But the scar on my wrist still burned faintly, a reminder of the chain, of the first night. And every time I closed my eyes, I saw the depot. Not in flames, not in ruins, but whole. Waiting. I told myself I'd never go back, but the packages were already finding me. The scar wouldn't heal. At first, I thought it was just a burn from the depot fire, a welt that would fade with time. But it didn't. It stayed raw, red and faintly glowing beneath the skin, like an ember buried in flesh. Every night it pulsed, syncing with the hum I could still hear in the walls. I tried to ignore it, bandaged it, covered it with long sleeves, told myself it was nothing. But the mark wasn't just on my wrist anymore. It was inside me. The first sign came when I woke to find a package in my living room. I hadn't heard the door open, I hadn't heard footsteps, but there it was, sitting neatly on the coffee table. Plain cardboard, no tape, no label. Just waiting. I didn't touch it. I didn't even breathe near it. I backed into the kitchen, crowbar in hand, heart pounding. The package hummed faintly, vibrating the table. My scar burned in response, the rhythm syncing perfectly. I swung the crowbar, splitting the box in two. It was empty, but the hum didn't stop. That night I dreamed of the road again. Endless asphalt stretching into the dark, mailboxes lining the shoulders, each one marked with the same jagged circle I'd seen on the porches. Figures stood by them, tall and thin, their heads cocked at impossible angles. They didn't move. They didn't speak. They just watched. When I woke, the scar was burning hot, and another package sat by the door. I smashed that one too. Empty. Always empty. But the hum lingered, and the scar pulsed, and I knew the packages weren't meant to be opened. They were meant to remind me. The mark was binding me. I tried to leave town, packed a bag, filled the tank, and drove until the highway blurred into desert. But no matter how far I went, the road bent back on itself. The same mile markers, the same gas stations, the same mailboxes. By dawn, I was back at my apartment. The scar burned hotter than ever, and 3 packages waited on the doorstep. I didn't smash them this time. I didn't touch them at all. I just stood there staring, my chest hollow. The rules whispered in my head, louder than ever. If you survive the 7th night, you are no longer the driver. You are the dispatcher. I understood now. The mark wasn't a wound. It was a brand, a claim. The road had chosen me, and no matter how far I ran, no matter how many packages I destroyed, I couldn't escape it. The packages would keep coming. The rules would keep growing, and the scar would keep burning, a reminder that I wasn't free. I wasn't the driver anymore. I was part of the system. I tried to live like it was over. I told myself the scar was just a scar. The packages were gone, and the road had finally let me go. But the truth was simpler, crueler. The road doesn't let anyone go. It started small, a sound in the distance, faint but familiar, the low hum of tires on asphalt. I'd hear it at night, long after traffic had died down. A steady rhythm that grew louder the longer I listened. Sometimes it came from the street outside my apartment, sometimes from the hallway. Once I swore it was inside my bedroom. Then came the slips. I found the first one tucked under my windshield wiper. A delivery address scrawled in faded ink. No package, just the slip. I tore it up, tossed it in the trash. The next morning, another appeared. Different address. Same handwriting. By the 3rd day, there were dozens. Slips under the door, in the mailbox, taped to the bathroom mirror. Each one an address I recognized from the route. Each one a reminder. The scar on my wrist burned hotter with every slip I ignored. I tried to fight it. I burned the slips, shredded them, flushed them down the toilet. But they always came back, and the hum grew louder. On the 7th night after I quit, I woke to find the van parked outside my apartment. Not just any van. My van. The same dent in the bumper, the same cracked side mirror, the same faint smell of diesel and ash. The keys sat on the hood, waiting. I stood at the window, staring down at it, my chest hollow. The hum filled the room, vibrating the glass. My scar burned like fire. I told myself not to go, not to touch the keys, not to open the door. But the road was calling. I don't remember walking outside. One moment I was at the window, the next I was standing by the van, the keys cold in my hand. The door creaked open, the driver's seat waiting. Inside, the rules were taped to the glove compartment. The same list, the same faded ink. But there was a new line at the bottom. My hands shook as I traced the words. The packages were already in the back. I hadn't loaded them. I hadn't touched them. But they were there, stacked neatly, humming faintly. I sat behind the wheel, the scar on my wrist burning, the hum syncing with my heartbeat. The engine roared to life on its own, headlights cutting through the dark. The road stretched ahead, endless and waiting. I told myself I could fight it, that I could turn the wheel, drive away, escape. But the truth was already written. The road doesn't forget, and it doesn't forgive. As the van rolled forward, the hum grew louder, the packages shifting in the back. The rules whispered in my head, each line etched deeper than the last. I wasn't the driver anymore. I wasn't even the dispatcher. I was something else. Something the road had made. And the route was only beginning.